My pleasure and privilege to join the great initiative you all have taken years back, and now it is 88th and soon maybe 100 and 500, because this will be growing more and more with the passage of time. Thank you all of you once again. Please.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable words. We will surely get back to you after the talk. Culture is often described as social rather than individual, local rather than universal, learned rather than instituted, historical rather than biological, and evolved rather than planned. And our today's speaker, Ms. Disha, will be speaking on one of such cultures, which is the tribal cultures in India. So I would like to invite Ms. Disha for the talk. Disha, the stage is all yours.
Humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together, all things connect. Good evening, Honorable Chief Guest, respected teachers, and all of you presented here for the GSTS 89. Myself, Disha, and I am from Shamlal College Morning, and currently I am pursuing BCom program and the speaker for the GSTS 89. And I am going to share my views on the topic, understanding the tribal heritage of India. Tribal people are not off-center. They are actually following their cultures and traditions without any hesitation. In today's talk, my objectives are, firstly, to discuss the demographic and geographic status of tribals, in which we will get to know about their characteristics and location. My second objective is to revisit the history of tribals through the ages. Tribal culture is not new in our nation. It is continuously gracing the population and traditions of India from the ancient times to the medieval times to till the modern times. My third objective is to understand the rights, health, and education status of the tribal people in the contemporary scenario. My fourth objective is to analyze the different government policies, acts, and contribution of the community. My fifth objective is to figure out the representation of tribes in the popular culture, like in the documentaries and in the films. A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. A social group composed of numerous families, clans, or generations having a shared ancestry and language is known as a tribe. Tribal culture is often described as social rather than individual, local rather than universal, learned rather than instinctive, and historical rather than biological. The characteristics of tribals are: they have well-demarcated geographical territory. They live mostly in the Himalayan belt, Central India, Western India, in Dravidian region, and in Andaman and Nicobar Island. They recognize one person as a leader, and they have their own culture, dialect, and beliefs. They have a strong belongings to their community and consider themselves as the son of soil. They lack monetary economy and dependent on barter system. ज़्यादातर tribals agriculture, art crafts and handicrafts का ही काम करते थे. State system आने के बाद वो खुद अपना tribal chief select कर सकते थे, and their law and order managed through family and kinship ties. They have their own deities and form of religion are animism, totemism, and naturism. Means worship of any soul, ancestors, stone, any tree, animal, water, and wood. Total population of tribes is 10.43 crores, which accounts for 8.6% of the total population. The Republic of India has 645 tribal district communities. Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, along with many states having a tribal population of 83.2%. Major tribes of Madhya Pradesh are Bhils, Bharia, Korku, Kol, which accounts for 14.70%. छत्तीसगढ़ में रहने वाली ट्राइब्स हैं बहना, भात्रा, अगारिया, कंवर, which accounts for 30.62%. In Rajasthan, there were Bhils, Damaria, Danka, Saharia, which accounts for 8.90%. अरुणाचल प्रदेश में हमें पाए जा सकते हैं अघोर, मोम्बा, डफला, ग्यालोंग जो है 68.79%। महाराष्ट्र में है भैना, भुंजिया, खोंड, डनका जो है 10.10% of the total tribal population in state. In Assam, we have Chakma, Dimsa, Garos, Khasis, Karbi, which accounts for 12.45%, and in Odisha, Ghara, Koya, Munda, Paroja, Bhumji holds for 9.20%. अगर हम इसे वर्ल्ड वाइड ट्राइबल पॉपुलेशन से कंपेयर करें तो एस्टिमेटेड 476 million indigenous people are there, belonging to 5,000 different groups in 90 countries, और पूरी ग्लोबल पॉपुलेशन का ये 6% हिस्सा है। मेजॉरिटी ट्राइब्स एशिया में पाए जाते हैं जो कि है 70%, देन अफ्रीका में 16.3%, देन इन लैटिन अमेरिका एंड कैरिबिया 11.5%, and then 1.6% in Northern America. इंडिया में 104 million indigenous people हैं, and after that there is Philippines, 15 million people, and 14 million people is in Vietnam, 13 million in Kenya, and 12 million in Mexico. Next is to revisit the history of tribals in ancient times. By 2500 BCE, in the Saraswati civilization, हमारे ancient India की सबसे बड़ी civilization बनी। Between 5000 and 7000 BCE, pastoral camps and the first village farming communities settled into this fertile region. Over the years, इन communities ने भी खुद को develop किया इनकी skill से, जैसे कि pottery, farming and town planning. इस civilization के artifacts जैसे कि seals, beads, pottery, ओमान और बहरान में भी पाए गए, indicating trade with the distant regions across both land and ocean. इस civilization में बहुत से progressive features भी थे, जैसे कि sewer, drainage, baths, and that's why in the Saraswati civilization must be ranked among the most advanced. वहीं जब आर्यन ट्राइब्स आए और इंडियन सोसाइटी में वो घुले मिले डेवलप किया उन्होंने खुद को, तब इस्टेब्लिश हुआ वैदिक सिविलाइजेशन। आदिवासी समाज का कथन हमारे पुराणों कहानियों में भी हुआ है, जैसे कि रामायण, महाभारत, विष्णु पुराण, हर्षचरित्रा is a testimony of facts of their proactive role in the gradual evolution of Indian society and culture. Like Kinnaras and Kiras in ancient text, एकलव्य भेल ट्राइब से बिलोंग करते थे। Mundas and Nagas are said to have fought alongside the Kauravas at Mahabharat war. Bhim married Hidimba, a tribal lady. Tribal folklore contains legends from Hindu epics. For instance, the Gonds considered themselves the descendants of Raman, and Mundas considered themselves as descendants of Manu. In the medieval period, the society was already divided according to the rules of Varna. These rules were prescribed by Brahmins, but there are many societies also who did not follow the social rules and rituals prescribed by them, और ना ही tribals ने खुद को बहुत सी unequal classes में बांटा। Some powerful tribes controlled some large territories, like in Punjab, Khokar tribe was very influential during the 13th and 14th century. Kamal Khan Khakkar of Khakkar tribe was a noble mansabdar by Emperor Akbar. In the western Himalayas lived the shepherd tribe of Gadis. The Maharashtra highlands and Karnataka were home to Kolis and Bedars. Wills spread across the western and central India. By the 16th century, many of them had become settled agriculturists and some even zamindars. Gond tribe lived in a vast forested region called Gondwana, and they practiced shifting cultivation. The Akbarnama mentions the Gond kingdom of Garha Katanga that had 70,000 villages. The administrative system of these kingdoms was becoming centralized. Ahom tribe migrated to the Brahmaputra Valley in the 13th century. In 1662, the Mughals under Mir Jumla attacked the Ahom kingdom and defeated them. They depended upon the forced labor. Those forced to work for the state were called pigs. Literature and culture flourished in their time. Works known as Buranjis were written first in the Ahom language and then in the Assamese language. In the modern period, India has been rightly described as a melting pot of race and tribes. Entering India from various directions and from various regions of Asia, they also belong to different races. Now appear the British colonialists with their modern technology, new approach, vested interest. The advent of British rule meant opening up of tribal areas along the sea coast in Bihar and Bengal. The construction of Grand Trunk Road through tribal pockets accelerated the influx of merchants, moneylenders, and land grabbers. The monumental endurance and patience of the tribals exhausted in the wake of the breakdown of tribal order in the tribal areas in 18th century. Paharia uprising towards in the end of 18th century, Munda uprising, the Santhal insurrection, Bhil rebellion, Bastar uprising, and Gond rebellion are the examples of new awakening among the tribals of India. Christianity penetrated deep into the tribal areas under the patronage of British rulers. This led to revitalization movements among the tribal like Kherwar movement, Sardari movement, Birsa movement, Tana Bhagat movement. With the departure of Britishers and rise of independent India, the tribal citizens of the country were promised the upliftment of the tribals was an article of faith for our constitution makers. The various pieces of legislation in India during British rule since the 1870s were collectively called the Criminal Tribes Act. They criminalized entire communities by categorizing them as habitual criminals. Because of this, restriction on their movements was also imposed. Adult male members of such groups were forced to report weekly to the local police. Under this act, ethnic or social communities in India were defined as addicted to the systematic commission of non-bailable offenses such as theft and were registered by the government. At the time of independence, 13 million people in 127 communities faced search and arrest if any member of the group was found outside the prescribed area. The act was repealed in August 1949 and former criminal tribes were denotified in 1952 when the act was replaced with the Habitual Offenders Act 1952. Today, there are 313 nomadic tribes and 198 denotified tribes of India. Yet, the legacy of the past continues to affect the majority of 16 million people belonging to these tribes, as their historical associations have meant continued alienation and stereotyping by the police and the media, as well as economic hardships. The first report on minority rights made public in the late August 1947 provided for reservation of untouchables only. बट उस असेंबली के एक मेंबर ने ये देखा कि आदिवासी समाज जिनको जरूरत है और वो बहुत डिजर्विंग भी हैं, लेकिन तब उनको शामिल नहीं किया गया था. The member was Jaipal Singh himself. He was a Munda from Chota Nagpur. He has sent by missionaries to study in Oxford and he made a name there as a superb hockey player. He invented a kind of gospel of his own and held that the tribals were original inhabitants of the subcontinent. उन्होंने एक आदिवासी महासभा बनाई 1938 में, जिसमें उन्होंने मांग की एक अलग राष्ट्र झारखंड की. In the Constituent Assembly, he came to represent the tribals not just of his native plateau but all of India. His first speech was made on 19th December 1946 in welcoming the Objectives Resolution. He provided a masterly summation of Adivasi case as a Jangri as an Adivasi. He said, I am not expected to understand the legal intricacies of the resolution, but my common sense tells me that every one of us should march in that road to freedom and fight together. The whole history of my people is one of continuous exploitation and dispossession by the non-aboriginals of India, punctuated by rebellions and disorder. A new chapter of independent India has to be started where there is equality of opportunity, where no one would be neglected. 3 years later, in the discussion in the draft constitution, Jaipal made a speech that was printed in all senses of the word. The Constituent Assembly had covered a subcommittee and tribal rights headed by the veteran social worker A.B. Thakkar. His findings and the words of Jaipal and company sensitized the House to be tribal predicament. The we referred to Hindu society as whole. It had sent against Adivasis by either ignoring them or exploiting them. Now, let's talk about tribals education. Literacy among tribals people in India is at most as 6% only, compared with the literacy rates of 29.60% in 1991, 47.10% in 2001, and 58.96% as per the census 2011. Government have spent considerable amount of money for tribal youth education, but the results are very meager. There are 892 centrally sanctioned ashram schools spread across the country. They provide boarding and lodging facilities to children in tribal areas. Apart from these, department has also started 197 Eklavya model residential schools. Ministry of Tribal Affairs provides the funds for the construction of hostels, and day-to-day expenses were also carried out by them. Rajiv Gandhi National Fellowship Scheme was introduced with the objective to encourage the students to pursue higher education. Vocational Training Center was introduced with the aim to develop the skill of scheduled tribe students. For this, it is important to remove gender disparity in education. Awareness campaigns and counseling sessions are to be done for bringing attitudinal change in parents, and also teachers should be locally recruited who understands and respect tribal culture, and most importantly are comfortable in the local language. Gross enrollment ratio for the scheduled tribe students in the primary level are 113.2%, 109.4%, and 106.7% in the years 2013 and 14, 14 and 15, 2015 and 16, जो कि लगातार डिक्रीज होता जा रहा है. मीन्स प्राइमरी लेवल पर ही ट्राइबल्स एडमिशंस कम ले रहे हैं, और वहीं सेकेंडरी लेवल पर GER है 70.2%, 72.2%, and 74.5% in the years respectively. And GER for the higher education students is 11.3%, 13.7%, 14.2%, and 15.4% in the years 2013 to 2017, which is at increasing pace and a good sign for tribals. Passing percentage of secondary examination during 2010 to 2015 for scheduled tribe students are 61.3%, 62.1%, 61.4%, 64.5%, and 64.1%, which is increasing in the 2010 and 11, decrease in 2012, increase at a constant rate in the year 2013 and 14, and again decrease in 2015. Higher secondary examination passing percentages 66.5%, 65.8%, 68.9%, 69%, and 70.6% during 2010 to 2015, which is increasing in 2010 to 14 and decreasing 2015. National Policy on Education 1986, again revised in 1992, efforts for universalization of primary education continued through the program of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Midday Meal Act as a support service to increase retention rates in the primary education. The dropout rates, which is another crucial indicator in the field of educational development, also shows that there has been a steady decline in the respect of both general and scheduled tribe categories. Then, in the health sector, there are improvements in parameters of child mortality. It became half from 90 in the 1988 to 44 in 2014. They suffered from triple burden of diseases: malnutrition, communicable diseases like malaria and tuberculosis, and non-communicable diseases like cancer and diabetes. Healthcare institutions in tribal areas are less than required. Difficult natural conditions, animal and snake bites were socio-economic determinants, especially in housing and sanitation, also affects the tribal health. Government is making efforts like Tribal Relief Fund is introduced to provide financial assistance. Janani Janma Raksha scheme was introduced to cope up to the nutritional values of mother and the newborn. Agency named Piramal Swasthya is working for the tribal's health and sanitation, but the results are very meager. It is necessary to restructure and strengthen the public healthcare system in accordance with the needs and aspirations of the tribal communities with their full participation. Doctors at the primary health centers in the tribal areas for overall India as on 31st March 2017 are required to be 4,024, sanctioned are 5,565 and 4,543 centers are currently in position of working. But 1,538 centers are currently vacant and 627 centers are currently didn't seem to be working. After spending considerable amount on tribals' education and health, still it is not improving very much. It is because government is lacking behind in the challenges faced by the tribal people like financial problems. Still, they are not able to cope up with their economical assistance, management of their household responsibilities, which leads to another challenge, which is less parental support in the academic learning to tribals. It is essential for students to possess interest and high level of motivation, but they possess lack of motivation, causes of which is lack of efficient understanding of academic concepts, learning disabilities, unavailability of learning materials. Language and cultural differences are the significant barriers that tribal students experience within the course of acquisition of education. Lack of facilities, amenities, and learning materials are the major challenges faced by both tribals and the government. And in health sector, lack of awareness of health issues, lack of facilities in remote rural areas, lack of emergency transportation, and discriminatory behavior by healthcare providers are the challenges in the improvement of health facilities, to which government is still managing to cope up with. Measures to the protection of tribals are there for the protection of their welfare and interest, like under Article 330, reservation of seats for STs in Lok Sabha, Article 332, seats in the state legislatures. The central government awards a scholarship to deserving students for higher education in foreign other educational schemes like hostels, Eklavya model residential schools was also there. Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006 has enforced. Infrastructure and development support under Article 275(1) of the Constitution has been implemented. Now, according to the PIB, Government of India, the schemes of the Ministry of Tribal Affairs are demand-driven and funding are made in various sectors for the tribals. There are various schemes and programs launched for the development of tribals, like pre- and post-matric scholarship scheme for ST students, national overseas scholarship for them, grant and aid to voluntary organizations working for welfare of STs and institutional support for the development of and marketing of tribal products. Pioneer forest produced through minimum support price and mechanism of marketing and development. Grant and aids to tribal research institutes, schemes rendered to support national or state scheduled tribe finance and development cooperation. Besides these schemes, some important acts has also been passed for their welfare, like Forest Rights Act 2006. The Scheduled Tribes and the Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act was passed on December 15, 2006, but only notified into the force on December 31, 2007. Protection of Civil Rights Act 1955, an act to prescribe punishment for the practice of untouchability for the enforcement of any disability arising. SC/ST Prevention for Atrocities Act, an act to prevent the commission of offences of atrocities against the members of the scheduled caste, to provide for the trial of such offences and for the relief and rehabilitation of the victims of such offences. Panchayats extension to scheduled areas. Act 1996 is a law enacted by the Government of India to cover the scheduled areas which are not covered in the 73rd Amendment or Panchayati Raj Act of the Indian Constitution. It was enacted on 24th December 1996 to enable Gram Sabhas to self-govern their natural resources. Tribal people have contributed to India in many ways and in many fields, like in sports, in politics, and as social activists and as freedom fighters. Many people like Draupadi Murmu ji, Gyarishi Devi, Tulsi Munda, Duty Chand, Birsa Munda, and Tilka Manjhi has played a magnificent role in the India's development. Draupadi Murmu ji, our current president, she is the first person belonging to tribal community and second woman after Pratibha Patil to hold the office. Before joining politics, she worked as a primary school teacher. Later, she worked as a professor in Sri Aurobindo Integral Education Center at Rairangpur till 1997. In 1997, Draupadi Murmu ji was elected as the councillor of the Rairangpur Nagar Panchayat as an independent candidate from a reserved seat for women. She then joined the Bharatiya Janata Party in 2007. She received the Neelkant Award for the Best MLA of the Odisha Legislative Assembly. We should always remember such contribution of the tribals. Not only the following, but tribals have contributed in trading and manufacturing of unique products such as Aipan craft, Tamta product, Ringal craft, Thulma, Munshiara Rajma, worldly style painting, and jewelry on Dokra style. So, in today's contemporary India, tribals are portrayed differently. In India, the parallel film and the art film movement and contemporary independent films and documentaries foregrounded many of the Adivasi issues in the mainstream. Many of the films were ethnographic films, documented lives of the Adivasi communities such as Bastar, tribes and tribulations. Apart from that, a few biographical documentary films were also produced, such as Ulgulan, Ek Kranti, a biography of legendary indigenous leader Birsa Munda. Many films have addressed contemporary Adivasi issues like poverty, insurgency, land rights, or violence against indigenous people, like in a film Buddha Weeps in a Jadugoda, showed how the Adivasis of Jharkhand negotiated and protested against the health hazards. Another documentary, Land, Labor and Love, narrated how indigenous people are working collaboratively to negotiate and overcome situated resource scarcities and difficulties of their lives. Some of these films were exhibited in the national and international film festivals like Vibgyor Film Festival and Tricontinental Film Festival. The film development flows from the barrel of the gun depicted that poor Adivasis lost their land in the three regions, namely in Odisha, Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, for some mining and construction work. That film shows how the local Adivasi social activists organized rallies and protested against the state violence and atrocities. Another film, Pratishodh, focuses on Adivasi people's protest against government land acquisitions in Nagari, Jharkhand. The documentary shows how the political leaders and government officers mislead local Adivasis and manipulated their voices, face, and emotions. Besides the following, some books were also written for the tribals' content named Out of the Earth by Felin Padel and Samarendra Das, Mizo songs and folktales, painted words, and anthology of tribal literature edited by G.N. Devi. And recently, with the release of the 5 volumes of Encyclopedia of Tribes in Odisha, Odisha became the first state in India to start an encyclopedia on tribal communities and document their historical and unique traditions. At last, I would like to end my talk with my opinions and my perspectives. I personally thought कि सिर्फ गवर्नमेंट ही नहीं, इंडिविजुअल्स को भी अपने लेवल पर ट्राइबल पीपल की हेल्प करनी चाहिए। जैसे कि हम पर्सनल लेवल पर कुछ ट्राइबल प्रोडक्ट्स खरीद सकते हैं जिससे कि उनकी इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी बढ़े। इनफैक्ट गवर्नमेंट को भी उनसे अपने प्रोडक्ट्स खरीदने चाहिए जिससे कि वो और भी ज़्यादा बेटर इकोनॉमिक उनकी कंडीशन हो पाए। बहुत ट्राइबल एरियाज में बहुत से डॉक्टर्स और एनजीओज को बहुत ज़्यादा एक्टिव होने की ज़रूरत है। हमें माइक्रो लेवल और मैक्रो लेवल दोनों ही लेवल पर उनको सपोर्ट सिस्टम और फाइनेंशियल असिस्टेंस प्रोवाइड करने की ज़रूरत है। सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप्स में और ज़्यादा इन्वेस्ट हम लोग कर सकते हैं फॉर देम, एंड वो लोग सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयड बने, इसलिए गवर्नमेंट को उनके स्मॉल बिजनेसेस स्टडी अप करने में भी हेल्प करनी चाहिए। At last, I would like to say that a tribe is a group of people connected to one another, connected to a leader, and connected to an idea. For millions of years, human beings have been part of one tribe or another. A group needs only two things to be a tribe: a shared interest and a way to communicate. Thank you so much. Thank you so much all for listening me.
Thank you, Disha. It was really indeed a very well researched and very well put together talk. Before moving to the question answer round, I just want to inform everyone that India has finally beaten Pakistan on the last ball, so everybody can relax now. Now going to the question answer round, I have one question from Ms. Samriddhi Kampal. What steps would you suggest to protect their indigenous culture in a rapidly modernizing world, besides the initiatives taken by the government?
जैसे कि मैंने अपने ओपिनियन में और पर्सपेक्टिव में भी बोला कि हमें अपने लेवल पर भी ट्राई करना चाहिए। फर्स्टली वी कैन बाय ट्राइबल प्रोडक्ट्स, लाइक अभी जैसे कि मैंने बोला कि ऐसे बहुत से प्रोडक्ट्स हैं जो कि हम लोगों को बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है, जिससे कि ट्राइबल कल्चर जिंदा रहे और हमें ट्राइबल कल्चर कुछ देखने का मौका मिले। जैसे कि मैंने आपको बताया रिंगल क्राफ्ट, थुलमा, मुंशियारा राजमा, वी कैन बाय दैट प्रोडक्ट्स, है ना। और सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप्स को हमें बहुत ज़्यादा हेल्प करनी चाहिए उनकी, एंड वी कैन हेल्प देम एट द माइक्रो लेवल्स एंड गवर्नमेंट एट द माइक्रो लेवल्स।
Next question I have from Ms. Subhi Singh. Why are the economic condition of these communities still vulnerable despite the rich cultural heritage?
जैसे कि मैंने टॉक में भी बताया कि इतना कंसीडरेबल अमाउंट गवर्नमेंट के द्वारा स्पेंड करने के बावजूद भी अभी तक ट्राइबल पीपल की कंडीशन में इतना ज्यादा सुधार नहीं आ पाया है। उसका रीजन ये है कि ट्राइबल पीपल के उनके बहुत सारे चैलेंजेस है जो कि एक साथ कवर अप करना बहुत मुश्किल है। वो छोटे छोटे गैप्स पहले फिल करने होंगे, राइट। जैसे कि उनके पेरेंट्स में इतनी अवेयरनेस नहीं है फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल कि वो प्राइमरी से आगे नहीं पढ़ने देते हैं। ऐसे बहुत से कम लोग हैं। सबसे पहले हमें पेरेंटल सपोर्ट की बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरत है उनके लिए अवेयरनेस प्रोग्राम्स हर एक लेवल पर, हर एक सेक्टर में, तब वो छोटे छोटे गैप्स फिल होंगे एंड देन वी विल मूव टू द बिग वन।
Yes. Next question I have from Ms. Archana Bharti. Due to lack of facilities, many tribal people in India turn Maoist. Do you think government efforts that you mentioned are really helpful to these people?
जैसे कि मैंने अभी कहा कि गवर्नमेंट कोशिश कर रही है, लेकिन वो गैप इतना ज्यादा बढ़ा है कि एक साथ हर एक चीज को कवर अप करना इज अ लिटिल बिट डिफिकल्ट फॉर द गवर्नमेंट आल्सो। इसीलिए ऐसा नहीं है कि ट्राइबल पीपल की कंडीशन में सुधार नहीं आया है, डेफिनेटली आया है। अगर आप हिस्ट्री देखें तो आया है सुधार, लेकिन इतना खर्च करने के बाद भी वो उतने बड़े लेवल पर सुधार नहीं आ पाया है, और वो उसमें टाइम लगेगा, एकदम से नहीं हो पाता।
Last question from my side. How has been your experience working with the GSTS?
Definitely my experience is very good. बहुत अच्छा एक्सपीरियंस रहा है। That's my first time कि मैं किसी टॉक में पार्टिसिपेट कर रही हूँ, और मेरे लिए भी बहुत ही ज़्यादा नॉलेजेबल ये टॉक रहा है कि मुझे ट्राइबल कल्चर के बारे में जानने का मौका मिला। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल उनकी हिस्ट्री जानने का मौका मिला, क्योंकि मैं खुद इतना नहीं जानती थी ट्राइबल कल्चर के बारे में, और मुझे बहुत ज़्यादा खुशी हुई आप सभी के साथ काम करने में। सो थैंक यू सो मच फॉर ऑलवेज गाइडिंग एंड सपोर्टिंग मी। थैंक यू।